I feel like such a chump for this one. Welcome back to another WalkerFilms review. Today I'm going to be talking about Oculus, the 2014 horror, the first real big wide release from, a reputable source from 2014. BlumHouse Productions, starring Katee Sackhoff and some other younger actress that apparently people are all for and loving, and the acting in this movie was not the problem. First, I want to tell you why I went. I, through the Schmoes Know movie show and podcast, became a big fan of Katee Sackhoff. I think she's one of the best horror actresses today. She doesn't only act in horror, but it seems a lot of her roles have been towards the darker side. I still need to see Riddick, but regardless, she was the first thing that had any draw to this movie for me. And secondly, Stephen King said this movie was amazing or awesome or something like that. He raved about it on his Twitter account after an advanced screening. So I'm thinking Stephen King loves this movie. It's got to be at least worth the watch, and it's got to be a good film. And then when I was thinking about that, I guess I forgot that most of the movies that Stephen King has been involved with were terrible. But also, I'm a film student who loves horror. I want to be able to keep up on modern horror releases as much as I love the old classics and still have a million of those to see. I try to balance new stuff with old. So, all that said, I went to this movie for $5. It was either this or The Winter Soldier, and I made the worst decision of my whole life. Well, maybe not my whole life, but of the last 2 days at least. Now, BlumHouse Productions has put out a lot of good movies. Apparently, they've gotten popular or big enough to only introduce themselves as BH Productions in the credits for this movie, which, by the way, the credits were like 2 seconds long and had BlumHouse Productions 3 times and then the title of the movie. No credits to anybody else involved. So, props, Jason Blum, you're really getting your name out there, even though only in initials now. But this movie was worse than the majority of all their studio's other ones. I'm going to list off the movies that I like this less than here. Oculus was worse than Paranormal Activity, Paranormal Activity 3, Stage Fright, Insidious, Insidious 2, and The Purge. It was on par with Dark Skies, and it was only better than Sinister and Paranormal Activity 2. You might be saying Sinister, that was a good movie, that it got lots of good reviews. If nothing else, it was scary, and I feel exactly the same way about this movie that I do about Sinister. It got all these sort of rave reviews and was called really gritty and intense and original and really scary. A lot of people were saying they, jumped out of their seats, and I laughed all the way through Sinister. I laughed all the way through Sinister. The ending made me want to just lose faith in the horror genre altogether, that people think that was a good ending. And with this movie, is the same thing. Everyone's saying it's really scary. I even heard a couple people say it's the best movie since The Conjuring, best horror movie since The Conjuring, and come on. Nothing happens in this movie. Yes, a ton of stuff happens, but every time something happens, it turns out it didn't happen, or it was only the imagination, or maybe it happened, but maybe it was their imagination. And it's like that every scene, every instant, between any characters, the entire movie. Characters just within the same scene start switching back between points in time, just out of nowhere, like the mom. Katee Sackhoff is the mother of 2 children whose parents were murdered. He's a man now, he's 21, he gets released from the mental institution that he's been in ever since he was a kid, and his sister's been out and about, and the reason he was in the mental institution was that he killed his father, but he keeps blaming it on the mirror. Him and his sister are convinced that this mirror that they have is haunted and makes people kill people. And that's basically, I feel like the entirety of the story of the short that this is based on is based off of the director's first movie, which was from 2006, Oculus 3. I don't know, it's got a longer, more confusing title, but I feel like a 30-minute version of this movie in the room with the mirror would have been way better than this hodgepodge of back and forth nothing that has no tie-up at the end, just leaves everything unresolved, kind of where it's supposed to be a resolution, but because of the way the movie was handled the entire way through, where you never know what's happening, it was a mess. It was a total mess. So I feel totally ruined that I got suckered into going to this one. I hope you guys don't just go to this expecting it to be, you know, a modern horror great, like everyone kind of seems to be saying it is. Now, my expectations might have been a little too high, and not everything in this movie was terrible. Katee Sackhoff is awesome. You know, she was legitimately terrifying in this. Her makeup and the way she carried herself and acted was incredible. I mean, I've never seen a mother character be as terrifying as she was in this. But every time she would have a scene where she would be intense and she would be gripping and I would get sucked in, another character would do something to just completely wipe it out.
Good morning, Cincinnati. It's a wonderful morning in suburban Ohio. It'll be a high of 79 and there's no traffic anywhere. However, in breaking news, over in Japan it's been discovered that the monster known as Gojira has been brought back to life by nuclear waste. He also is mutated and can fly and breathe fire.
And it just ruined every sense of anything going right for this movie for me. I guess I could see why some people would enjoy this, but man, you really got to be okay with just having ambiguity at every turn and having everything you think happened that was creepy and that was really effective after that happens, every single time, the 100 times it happens in this movie. Just be ready for 2 seconds later for that to not have happened. They're going to say, oh wait, that creepy thing? No, you're just hallucinating, you know? Like, that's not real, it's just the mirror. But wait, no, it isn't the mirror, because I'm right. And then everybody has such a huge ego in this movie, they think they were the ones who know the real clear picture. And I'm sure it was some attempt to be psychoanalytically brilliant in a character study, and that's probably why Stephen King liked it so much, because it really is just a character study. You know, there's very little gore or supernatural, real anything you see in this. It's the way the characters interact with themselves. And man, I hated all the characters in this movie. There was not one likable character except the mother, because she was so freaking creepy. And I just wanted her to get the whole family because they were all being so stupid. I don't know. Let's see, is there anything I missed here? Okay. They tried to be scary. They legitimately tried to be scary. There was no sense of poking fun at themselves or the horror genre or realizing that what they might be doing is ridiculous. They tried to scare the shit out of the audience. And they did it in ways by literally just having characters you don't know who they are with glowing eyes standing there smiling. It's like, since when is a smiling demon with a little bit of low, like, cello noise in the bottom? It's the worst attempt at emulating something like an Insidious with no substance behind it. It's like the reason Insidious, those demons worked, is because we were inside the mind of the child. Those were his projections. That was his projection of hell or whatever. It was hell projecting onto him and all that. And, you know, save my talk about Insidious for another review. But this was just such a half-assed attempt at being every other BlumHouse production movie that there's been, you know. And if Sackhoff hadn't been in this movie, man, I would be tearing this even more to shreds than I already am. There's no way I'm going to give this any way of a good rating. I watched Bats from 1999 a day or two ago, a movie I always remember from my childhood as having one of the coolest posters at the video store, which I may just snag one of those up and hang it up in my house. But that movie, I would watch that 10 times before I ever sat through this piece of shit again. Like, because because that movie was at least funny, you know? Funny because it was bad, and funny because it was trying to be funny and was bad at that. But this movie was trying to be scary, and it was just boring, and it was pathetic. Alright, now I'd like to introduce you to a new part of these Walker Films reviews I like to call Quotes from Walker's Notepad, where I take a quote that I wrote in my notepad when I was watching the movie, as I almost always take notes when I watch these movies, and I scan it in and read it off to you to explain what was going on in my mind to form these opinions that I have just presented to you in review. Sackhoff is extremely scary, spellbindingly, and then right back to cliches. Phone call can't call 911 because of mirror. Fuck! People who are scared of this film be all like, OMG, a demon smile! What the fuck, man? What the fuck? A bunch of unidentified fake dead people just watching the kids go insane is not scary! Alright. So in conclusion, initially I gave this movie a 4 out of 10 in my notebook at the end, but after talking about it more, this has got to be 3 out of 10. One of the worst and most disappointing movies I've seen in recent times. It's bad. Bad, 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 bad. Go see it only if you really want to believe that it's bad, or if you want to believe the other critics, you know, that it's great and terrifying. Alright, this has been another WalkerFilms review. I'll catch you next time. Take it easy.